So, you want to learn how to bench. Well, it's a pretty simple exercise, all day considered. Basically, the bench, there are a lot of, it's a simple act, but there are a lot of variations of the bench press. All with different pros and cons and different objectives. Generally speaking, but in the most basic sense, a bench can be boiled down to when you're laying down like this. So you're laying down on the bench like this. You lay down, slight bend in your back. You do this, down and up, down and up, down and up. That's generally the most basic form of the bench. But the reality is, though, that the bench can be formed a whole bunch of different ways for everything. Demonstrate again. Let's just watch that again. Generally speaking, you want to be under the bar like this. You want to pull your shoulders back behind you like this. This helps shorten the distance your bar has to travel. You want to make sure your bars are perpendicular to the bar, as you want your forearms facing upward, like this. You don't want your bars bending in or out generally. Those are in a regular bench press. If you're doing, you want to make sure the bar path comes out here. Then you lower it and up. That is basically that is the medium version of the bench press. That is what people often advocate for. It's basically a bench that's in between a powerlifting style bench and a bodybuilder style bench. Yeah, because that is basically those are basically the two variations of bench you will see. Because the bench can be done in a multi different ways. Like in powerlifting, for example, you want to arch your back extraordinarily. You want to push your back. You want in power. Actually, just subtract that. What's the difference between a powerlifting and a bodybuilding bench? Powerlifting benches are designed when your powerlifters are benching for maximum load, while bodybuilders are benching for maximum tension. They're basically lifting. Here's what I mean. Bench and powerlifting, people generally, they're not trying to work there. They're trying to lift load. Like in powerlifting, you often see people, they often achieve maximum loadage by shortening the distance the bar has to travel from your chest to lockout. Lockout is basically here, when the bar is like this. This is lockout. Yeah, that's basically why arching. That's why arching. That's why arching your back. That's why everyone arches their back. It's about shortening the range of motion the lift has to travel. More range of motion a bar has to travel. Even though it's like this. The longer a bar has to travel, the more force that weight's is going to apply. It's like a crowbar analogy. The further along on the crowbar you apply pressure to it, the more force it will actually generate at the other end, even if the force is technically the same. For example, I think powerlifters in general oftentimes bench with this idea of lifting maximum poundages. I think I just repeated that, didn't I? Shit. Well, now I'm going to say it again. That's the goal. And powerlifters often achieve this by two means. Either by arching your back, by hyper-arching your back, by hyper-arching their backs. Basically, in powerlifting rules, your butt is not allowed to leave the bench. It has to be glued there. But oftentimes you see people bending their back super high like this. this, or like they almost bending themselves in half, or they another way to lower range of motion is by going a very wide grip. This shortens the range of motion you have to do. Consider this shortens the range of motion that the bar has to travel from your to your chest. Both methods achieve about the same thing. But generally, you're going to find that people do a mixture of both in order to lift maximum poundages. Yeah, and also in powerlifting, you can't bounce the bar. You have to hold it. Like this is how. Yeah, that's how powerlifters would often bench. It takes a lot of practice to figure out what is best for you. In bodybuilding, you often see what you might consider. You often see people you need to put to a less advantageous position. You're not trying to lift weight. You're trying to grow the muscle. You don't necessarily need to work the weight. You don't necessarily need to lift maximum poundages to grow muscle. You just have to apply necessary stimulus to the muscle with necessary volume. I often see this in powerlifters don't want to arch their back. They want to put themselves. They often put their feet on the bench, keeping a flat back, and they do this. They often do half reps. But why? Well, why do they do half reps? Well, because they're trying to work their chest, because they're going to put more emphasis on the chest. You see, the thing is that that your chest doesn't really work. You don't really utilize your chest at the top of a bench, believe it or not. Surprise, surprise. Turns out a compound exercise doesn't just use one muscle. The fact is, the bench actually uses the three main moves in the bench are your triceps, anterior delts, or your front delts, and your chest, or pecs. Let's repeat that again. Shoulders, triceps, and pecs. These are generally the muscles that are utilized at a bench. But they're not used equally at every stage of a bench. It's like your chest is generally used at the bottom to mid portion of the motion, along with your shoulders. In fact, your shoulders and chest actually work together a lot of the time. It's about a 50-50 split, from my personal experience. That tends to be they tend to grow each other pretty well. You know, you can't really train your chest without working your shoulder because they are connected. You know. But at the top of the motion, at lockout, you're not really utilizing your chest anymore. At that point, your triceps start taking over, which are these muscles right here. They're your pushing muscles. It's like, to think about it like this. At the bottom of the bench, right down here, you're not actually using that much. Like right here, this is like maximum shoulder right here. As you go up here, it transitions into more of a chest than tricep. It's like shoulders, chest, triceps. That's generally how the bench works. It is true though that your chest is also active at the bottom too, but not. It's like your shoulders are activated. Your shoulders carry 50%, your chest carries 50%. By the midpoint, your chest starts to take the full. Then it transitions into triceps. That's why bodybuilders often do half reps. It's not for cheating. They're doing it for a very specific reason to focus on the chest and not the triceps. Because the weak point then, or maybe you're trying to focus on weak points. like the weak point for a lot of people could be their triceps. They don't need how are they supposed to work their chest when their triceps are the main weak point on their lifts? Generally, and there's also that's basically the basic barbell. That's basically the idea of the bench. But then we have to get through all the other crap that the bench is. All the variations, like the incline bench, the dumbbell bench, all of these benches. What exactly are they all for? The reality is they're all trying, it's the same basic movement pattern, in all sense. They're all doing the same thing. Like the incline bench press is the way to think about incline bench versus regular bench and overhead press. Think of it like this. It's like on a continuum. Like you see, the overhead press is you can never overhead press as much as you bench press. Why? It's because the bench press just has more muscles to work with. It's like an overhead press, for example. You're still working your triceps. It really only generally works your triceps and anterior delts right here. These are your main movers. But in a bench press, you're using your anterior delt, triceps, and chest. You're using 3 muscles as opposed to 2. I consider that's generally what the overhead press is working. It's working 2. It has 2 muscles to work with better than 3. So you can just move more, generally speaking. And also it doesn't help that you're starting from a standstill. The bench itself is a very good the bench it's not applicable as much as other things, but if you want to really get a good, question is, how do you get good at benching? Well, for starters, bench more. But you probably have heard that before. If you want to get good at something, do it more. But that's only a hack. That's not the end all be all. If that works for the beginner, just bench more if you want to get good at something. But that doesn't work really. The bench press, as it stands, is it's easy to learn, but hard to improve at past the beginner but that's a video for another day. Yeah. So, Mr. Majestic signing off. Peace.